guys, welcome back to my page. Thank you so much for being here today. For this video for today, I'm going to be answering another submitted question. The question is how to deal with very difficult people when you live with them. Really struggling with my living situation at the moment due to my sibling moving back home. And a similar question, how to deal with a family member you live with that you constantly butt heads with. And before we jump into it, I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here today. If you're new, my name is Sarah. I'm a Christian life coach and content creator. And if you're not new, welcome back. Thank you for being here today. So I'm definitely having some fun answering these questions. This has been an answer to prayer because I spoke to the Lord last week and I was like, I want to make content, but I just don't really feel this moment like coming on and sharing about what's going on in my life. Like, I want to answer questions. And then, yeah, it just kind of came to me that I get submitted questions all of the time. For years, there's a pileup of submitted questions. And anyway, so if you have a submitted question you want to see answered, then just comment below. Okay, so let's get into the answer that I have. Okay, so the first thing that I would say is take a moment to sit down and reflect with the Lord and ask yourself, what are the biggest problems that you are having with this person? Maybe it's helpful to write it out, or maybe you are an external processor and you need to do like a video or a voice note on your phone, a voice recording. I do that when I'm like processing ideas or processing different things and then just like delete it after. Or again, you can write it down on paper, sit down and reflect on what are the main problems that I'm having with this person? What are our biggest challenges? What are our biggest differences? And being just really honest, like putting pride aside and saying, what part am I playing in this versus just the part that they're playing? Basically, what is your responsibility in this situation? Is there something you could be doing on your part that you could take responsibility, that you could be making it easier? Put yourself in their shoes. So actually, before I continue this, I just want to say, because it sounds like I'm just putting all the responsibility on the person, but I just want to empathize with you for a moment and say thank you for submitting the question to multiple people who have submitted the same question. I understand it's probably very, very difficult and it could be frustrating. You could be very angry, sad, disappointed. You could be experiencing a lot of emotions. So I just want to acknowledge that firstly of how difficult that might be. Now, continuing on. Now try to empathize with that person. So I'm not saying that this sibling is right or the parent is right, because they actually might be very toxic, but just try to put yourself in their shoes, not because they're right, but just to try to gain compassion for them. This is something that I try to do all of the time. I think it actually happens automatically, but you can train yourself to do this, is to take a moment and try to visualize yourself in their shoes and try to think of like, what kind of upbringing did they have? What type of past hurts did they have? Why do they act the way that they're acting? Where are they at currently in their life? Maybe you have a sibling who's partying all the time and is just so annoying. But maybe you can you can relate to them when you think about yourself when you were like 16 or 19 or 25 and you were partying all the time. And that was the most important thing to you, was going out with your friends and drinking. And you were spiritually blind and emotionally immature. So you can kind of put yourself in their position of where they're currently at. It's very hard to work with someone and to resolve issues in a relationship when you don't have compassion for them, because if you don't have compassion for them, it's hard to have love for them. You could also identify what their needs are and what your needs are, and then you can implement boundaries. So making a list, writing out a list of what type of boundaries do you need in place to protect yourself, and are you able to relay this to this person, to have a conversation with them that leads with compassion, not a conversation in the heat of the moment, not a conversation when you're frustrated and angry, but a conversation where you can lead with compassion and you can share with them, these are your needs and these are their needs, and how can we work work to allow both of our needs to be met without getting frustrated with one another. But a lot of the boundaries probably could just be things that you're going to implement on your own that they don't need to know about. You don't need to tell someone, like you don't call someone up and say, hey, these are my boundaries. Maybe some situations you do explain what your boundaries are verbally, but a lot of the times you just implement them and then people learn what your boundaries are. I think it's also important to know that you might never be fully on the same page as this person. It's kind of similar to also a marriage or any relationship where maybe you're never going to be exactly on the same page, but where can you both compromise to live more peaceably with one another? And this might be really difficult. This person might not be showing any sort of signs of being willing to change. I think that's the other thing, is accepting that they might never change, they might not be willing to change, they might not be able to change because of where they're at, maybe emotional immaturity, spiritually blind, woundings, different things like that, just pride, stubbornness, all of that. And so just knowing that all of the efforts that you put in, it might not change a situation on their end, but you can still find a way to live more in peace. And the Lord is also going to honor that He's going to see the effort that you're putting in. So regardless of if it seems like it's paying off or not, really at the end of the day, you and that person are responsible at the end of the day to stand in front of the Lord and say what you did and what you didn't do. So you are still working on to the Lord by being respectful and just trying to do what you can, but knowing that that person might not reciprocate it. Something that you could also do relationally with this person is really practice being a good listener. And like I said before, leading with compassion and also mirroring back what they share with you. So not like in a robotic way, but for example, if they blow up at you and say like, you woke me up in the morning when you started putting the dishes away, instead of you like rebuttaling or like blowing that back at them, you can lead with compassion by saying, well, you're listening and saying, okay, so you're upset right now. You're angry at me because I unloaded the dishwasher and it woke you up in the morning. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Maybe we can figure out a way. Maybe we can sort out a way, blank, blah, 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 blah. Repeating, mirroring back also really disarms people because you're listening to them and then you're empathizing with them and they actually feel heard. And similar to marriages, you also just want to practice in that relationship with them with not saying like, you never do this, or making big statements like you never do this and you always do that, because that's just bringing up things from the past. It's keeping a record of wrongs and it's just not going to help the situation. So that's just similar to marriage. You also don't want to say that. You want to focus on the situation in front of you. And it's also really helpful to lead with your feelings as opposed to what the person did. And my parents have always said this to me growing up as well. Instead of saying like, you wake me up all the time, every time you come home late at night, partying with your friends, you always wake me up, like blah, blah, blah. Instead of saying that, you can, as yourself now, you can lead with emotion and say, hey, I just want to talk to you about something. Last night, you woke me up and it really upset me. I felt really anxious because I need to have a good sleep in the morning. So when I get woken up, it's really frustrating for me because I have a really hard time falling back asleep. And then I wake up in the morning and I don't feel well and I just start to get really frustrated. So is there a way that we can work on this together so that you can still go out, but I can still get my sleep? So leading with how you felt about the situation as opposed to blaming the person, accusing them, and attacking them with your words by saying, you always wake me up. Also just being persistent, even if you feel like nothing is changing, just keep being persistent and continuing to show that person respect and love, even if they don't seem like they deserve either one of those, which can be really difficult. And don't give up if you like messed up and you snapped at them or got in a big fight with them. Don't feel like, oh, this is pointless, I'm never going to try again. Just keep being persistent, and obviously asking the Lord to give you strategy, asking the Lord to give you strength, and asking the Holy Spirit in that moment, should I bring this up? Should I talk about this now? Is this a bad time to talk about this? this. So there's a scripture, but this actually applies to husbands and wives, but I think it can apply a little bit in this situation as well, which is basically them being won over by your behavior. So this is 1 Peter 3 verses 1. Wives, in the same way, submit yourselves to your own husbands, so that if any of them do not believe the word, they may be won over without words by the behavior of their wives. So yeah, again, I know it's not a husband and wife situation, but your sibling or parent or whoever it is also able to possibly be won over by your behavior. Also, John 13 verses 35. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. And then Romans 12 verses 18, if possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. So again, I know in the situation, it might not be possible in your situation. And also if you're in like a toxic, abusive situation, then that's very different. Like some people just cannot be reasoned with. And sometimes you have to like, okay, Lord, like you have to make a way out of this so that I'm not living in his household anymore. But that's not what I'm talking about in this situation. Probably the most important thing would be to continue praying for that person. You're living in the same house as them. Maybe you're not going to be living in the same home as them for much longer or for all of your life. So you have this one opportunity where you are in close quarters with them. You can be a good influence by the way that you live. You can be praying for them. Maybe you share a wall with them. You can put your hand on their wall and be praying over their room. You can be just praying over them, praying over their room in general. Also, and yeah, prayer is very powerful. Just be persistent, because it might feel like what you're doing is like nothing is changing, but just be persistent with it. And also, if you are living with a difficult family member, if you're not already married, this might be a really good opportunity to practice in relationships, because just because you move out and are not living with that person anymore, once you get married and you're living with them, your spouse, you are going to butt heads on some things, 100%. It doesn't change when you live with your spouse, because you're still going to find things that are difficult, really difficult about them, just as much as you would with a parent or a sibling. And it doesn't matter that you're like, oh, I love this person, I chose them. There's still things that will be difficult. So it really is good practice. I remember when I lived with my parents, I was convicted on some things that I did. I think it was like, I don't remember what it was, if it was maybe not helping out around the house enough, or maybe it was just like leaving the house and not like really always saying where I'm going, or just different things like that I thought is fine to do to my parents, but I wouldn't do that in marriage. So then I'm like, oh, I actually need to start practicing being like the wife while I'm living with other people already. You also might need to take breaks, because it might be super exhausting living with this person. So again, that kind of goes under boundaries, when you need to have your boundaries. And this is applicable in marriage as well. If you're upset, you don't want to start talking to that person in the moment. If you need to get out of the house, if you need to go into your room and shut the door and just do some breathing exercises to just calm yourself down and pray and ask the Lord for strength. Taking breaks and is a part of having boundaries as well. And this might or might not work depending on how peaceable the person is, but also when you sit down and do some reflection, you can also add this to your reflection questions of like, are there qualities that are good about this person, that you do like about this person? Do you have similar interests? Is there anything that you can find common ground on that you can have conversations about and you can talk about? Maybe you're like, one person is a Christian, one person is an atheist. Maybe you're totally like politically on different ends of the spectrum. Maybe you feel like you have literally nothing in common, but maybe you have one thing in common, and maybe that's the safe thing that you can talk about. Or maybe there's one show or sport or hobby or something that you both do like. So maybe just sit down and see if there is something like that you have common interest in, that you are able to speak about without getting into an argument about, because it's something that's safe, that you both have find common ground, or that you can actually enjoy and do together. And then lastly, what I would say is also taking time with the Lord and asking the Lord Aside from the part of like, you know, what is my responsibility or what could I be doing differently? Maybe is there a wounding or is there something that is making it more difficult for me to get along with this person? Maybe the Lord reveals to you that you have unforgiveness towards them from the past. Maybe they've hurt you in the past. Maybe it doesn't have to do with them. Maybe you have like a wounding from your past that they are just poking at unknowingly and triggering you basically unknowingly. And it's just like a sore spot for you. And it's really not that much of this person's fault, but it's actually something within you that also needs to be healed. So that's something to consider as well. It might not always be a sibling or a parent. You could also be living with in-laws. There could be lots of different things. It could just be something really deeply rooted from your past, and asking the Holy Spirit, is there something within you that needs to be rooted out and healed that is affecting your relationship with them and your peace with them? And if the Lord does show that to you, then you can ask the Lord to help you to forgive that person, to come out of agreement with any lies that you may be believing, and to ask the Lord to bring healing to your heart, to speak truth, His truth, instead of the lies that you've been believing. Can I think of a random example? Maybe you're like living with in-laws, and maybe when you were young, maybe when you were like a teenager, you didn't have a lot of privacy, and your parents or siblings always like barged into your room, and you always felt like you never had your own space and you never had any privacy. And now you're living with your in-laws, and when they come into the room, or I don't know, whatever they do, share a bathroom with you, come and knock on the door, whatever they do, it just like makes you so angry, and you feel like they just do not respect your privacy, blah blah blah. And you're thinking it's all them, but it could be some of you that it's just triggering that from the past for yourself, that they weren't even there. It doesn't even have to do with them. So yeah, that's what I would say. That would be my response so far for that question. If you have any advice of how you are able to live peaceably, or were able to, or some advice of what you would do, then please comment it below. And also, if you have any questions that you would like to see me answered, then also please comment them below. So yeah, that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for your support, for liking, subscribing, commenting. Thank you so much to our Patreons, our supporters. And again, if you want to either become, if you want to become a Christian life coach, if you want to receive one-on-one coaching, if you want to join an inner healing program, all of the links are below. So thank you guys so much, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.